be warned, and also know that I'm very aware that this discussion could go off the rails, like more than normal, I guess. I don't know why I'm prefacing this. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that I already recorded this once, and I had to restart because I just went off into nowhere. I didn't reach any conclusions, which is fine, but I also just like went just super off the rails, um, which is not, yeah, it's not that uncommon, I know. But anyway, so I don't know if the title for this is appropriate. It was a really weird title to come up with, but I think it made sense about how. Well, no, I don't even remember what I was going to call it. But anxiety induced midlife crisis. Um, yeah, I was writing about the desire for youth the other day, and then today I started thinking about, like, man, like, really, what is a midlife crisis? And then I started thinking about me and my age today, and mortality and life and death and anxiety and all those things that come together. And I was like, man, I just realized I think that I've had the feelings of a midlife crisis for years, because I think so much of my anxiety is rooted in mortality, that that's what a midlife crisis is all about, right? Is about realizing, oh no, like, I've lived half my life already, and what have I done? And look at me, I'm trapped in this family dynamic or whatever. Like, all these stereotypes and cliches come out. Um, but I mean, like, I don't really know anyone particularly that I can say, like, oh man, they had a midlife crisis and they went off the rails and this, that, and the other thing and whatever. Like, I don't have that example in my life. I just have, like, stupid tropes from media and culture, but nothing specific that I've seen. So, but I was just thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, obviously, a midlife crisis, what really is that? Of course, it's tied to, like, the fear of death in a way, which is super obvious, but I mean, then I was tying that to just my anxiety, and I'm like, that's what so much of my anxiety is rooted in, that I've probably had these feelings of a midlife crisis for so long, for years and years and years, and I was curious, like, what's going to happen if I ever do have a midlife crisis? Like, for the way that it's been, like, presented to me through popular culture, and it's every time I've really seen it, it's always been like a man, for like any time that I can think of, that's going through a midlife crisis, and they do all these things that are the same things, and they go and buy sports cars, and ditch their families and start hanging out with, like, women half their age and all this stuff. I mean, obviously, if they're in midlife, that would make these women probably about 20s, uh, but things like that. And I was thinking, like, man, like, if I still go, like, I was just thinking, like, I feel like there's times where I haven't reacted in those ways, not necessarily, but I mean, there is a tie to some of those things where I'm like, I'm trying to cope with my anxiety, and if my anxiety is about similar things that midlife crisis would be about, like, maybe I react in some of the same ways. And I won't go into too much detail about that, but I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out, is one reason why, too, but I did, like I said, I did some writing about it the other day and was really thinking about it, and that continued on until today. It just kind of came back into my head, and I was just thinking, like, man, what if I just don't have a midlife crisis? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Because if I do, I wonder what the hell that's going to look like. If this has already been something I've been dealing with for a while, and it's just like, it's not something that lasts for days for me. It lasts for, hours maybe, or overnight sometimes, but very rarely. So whenever things like this hit me, it hits me pretty hard and intense, but for short increments of time. And I'm like, if I was going to have a midlife crisis, and it was a true crisis, it would be an unshakable thing, right? I wouldn't be able to get away from it, is how I always imagined that thing being from the presentations I've had, like the examples that I've been given. So I'm just not looking forward to that if it ever happens. And then I'm thinking, why would it have to happen? Like, I don't think it happens to everybody, and I've been thinking about this. It's not that I've resolved this issue or that I accept death. It's the fact that I'm so used to having feelings like this from time to time that I deal with them on, like, a regular, somewhat basis, that maybe it won't be such a big deal if it were to happen to me later on in 7 years or something. I don't know. I think it's also interesting that people view me in a couple different ways too, and I think more people probably would say that I'm a crotchety old man, curmudgeon, grumpy face, than I am a youthful spirit, but I definitely feel both. Like, I feel like the grumpy old man stuff is just, those things are just tied. Like, I have the attributes that I have because of the things I complain about and rant about, tied to being a grumpy old man set in his ways and darn kids and stuff. But at the same time, like, my sense of humor and the way that I can connect with youth kind of like puts me in the spot where I feel sometimes, again, I'm not 33. Like, is this 33? This is what 33 is supposed to be like? Because I feel like, I don't know, like, there's a lot of things that I mean, I don't want to say I feel like I'm in my young 20s or anything, because I don't feel that way either, because I can reflect on what I was doing in my 20s or young 20s. I don't do those things, so like, there's some experience and knowledge gained and maturity, but there's also just a lot of, I don't know, it's just a weird mix. I'm obviously a nuanced, complex individual, like most human beings are. But I was just thinking about this whole thing and just like, oh, midlife crisis, that's going to be cool. Maybe I won't have one. And the fact that my anxiety has already given me a little taste, if not more than that, of what that might feel like. And maybe people that have never had that anxiety for years and years and years of death, of feeling death and mortality, and had that like creep up on them, a sense of doom, then maybe once it hits them and they've never felt it before, maybe that's why that happens. Maybe it's just like just this foreign feeling where everything was fine, and then one day you're like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna die, and I don't know what to do about that, and I need to live. I need to really live, man. Like, and I think, fortunately, in some ways, I feel like I'm starting to understand what living is for me, and that it's not the same thing that it was before. I found like escaping my anxiety or attempting to escape my anxiety. Sometimes it's a very like positive coping mechanisms, and sometimes they're negative coping mechanisms that put me further away from myself and who I want to be, and put me further away from like living life. And what I mean by that is, I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, cool. What I mean by that is that, like, obviously I'm living life no matter what. Like, time is passing, but I guess the life that that's gross. The life that I want to live, I guess, or like what I value in life. My values are changing, and beforehand, I was so focused on little moments and little moments, little moments. As much foresight as I have, I didn't have it for myself. That's the thing. I have foresight into so many things, and like, if I'm planning a weekend or whatever, or years down the road, I'm like, these things will affect these other things, but I didn't care enough about my own future in many aspects, especially my, I don't know what you want to call it, my heart, my soul, my whatever, like, my emotional self and my mental well-being and stuff. I didn't really think about or plan for or have the same values for enough. I was very focused on living moments and short-term escapes and immediate satisfactions and stuff to cope with, to try and deal with life being over at some point. That I was like, I need to have all these little moments. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to do this. And now, recently, it's just been more of like the long game. And thinking about, like, I've always thought about, like, oh, I just want to be creating art for the rest of my life. I want to be doing this, or I want to like help students, or what have you. I want to have like meaningful stuff too. That's been a part of it for years, but there's other things that were negative coping mechanisms that I was definitely running to, specifically to combat the fear of death and my anxiety about mortality and living and being valued. I think is probably part of it too. Yeah. So I don't know. All those things came up again recently, and I was just reflecting on it and thinking about midlife crisis and like how I'm like, oh man, I think I'm ready for it. Like, and I don't feel like it's gonna happen anytime soon. I don't really feel like I'm in my midlife. At least I hope not. I just realized maybe this is coming up more because of like this heart issue that I'm having. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll see it in the upcoming vlog, which should be a day or two after this thing. But yeah, I've been having some heart problems recently, and I just connected the dots there. I didn't even think about that. Like, maybe it's just like, oh yeah, hey, like, I'm having some heart problems, and I haven't been like super deathly scared or feeling doom about it that much, but it's not like a fun thing. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, this thing's pretty important with keeping me alive, so yeah, I don't know. For some reason that turned out much lighter than I expected it to, but I guess that's not a bad thing. I don't know. I'm just gonna, yeah, again, just thoughts about how maybe some people who suffer through anxiety to this degree, or to this type of anxiety that reflects um, upon mortality. Maybe they're more prepared for things like midlife crisis, and they don't necessarily have them in the same way that other people do that don't really have anxiety about dying the same way that I do. So that might be cool. Maybe that plays to my advantage. I don't know. Then again, maybe it'd be better if I just had a concentrated, intense dose of it for like a while, but the rest of my life I didn't really think about it much. And I don't know if there's any way to get over that for me. I'm sure there has to be some type of acceptance somewhere, but that's probably going to be way down the road. I don't know. This is going off the rails now. Not that bad, but yeah, just a quick little thoughts on that, and we'll see you at another time, I guess. I hope.